Why, hello there. Welcome, welcome. I appreciate you stopping in to watch the stream. Hello to all my YouTube viewers and all of my Kick.com viewers. Hello, hello, welcome. Welcome to Brightly Minded. Um, as you can see, I did a little something to my hair over the weekend. I was feeling a little bit bored with my hair, and to avoid chopping it off, I decided to dye it instead. In the camera, you can tell that I missed a big section over here. But that's okay. I'm going to redo it in a couple of days. I just got to give my hair some time to breathe, because when you bleach it, you do a lot of damage to it. And I bought this special hair mask stuff to help keep it hydrated, and it makes it feel really, really soft. It's really pretty. I haven't done something like this to my hair in probably good 5 years or so. Yeah. I have had the rogue streaks like this before. And I just, out of curiosity, went through my Facebook pictures just to find something, to find the last time that I had my hair like this in particular. So I'm going to share with you. That was me from 2013. Yeah, 2013. That was when I did this last. It looks very pretty. And then I think the year after, I did this. I went bright red. So I have been very experimental with my hair. It's hair. You chop it off, it grows back. You color it, it grows in. Like it's hair, you know. You make a statement with it, I guess. Whatever. But anyway, I'm happy with it. I enjoy it. It makes me feel good. A lot of people at work complimented me about it today, so I'm quite happy with the result. Anyway, enough about that. Before we get into, again, the meat and potatoes of what today's video is about, we're going to throw up the disclaimer. So remember that the opinions expressed during the stream are my own and are shared for informational and discussion purposes only. I don't claim to be an expert in politics. I don't claim to be an expert in any of that stuff. And there is still a lot that I'm learning about politics as I go. But just to give you a little brief history with me, I've always been interested in politics. It's always been, something that I want to learn about, I want to know more about. And actually, in my last year in high school, I was actually convinced that I was going to be a politician. I was going to go into Canadian politics. I'm glad that I didn't, but just that interest has always been there. And as I'm, living and working here in the US and everything that's going on with politics, it's something that I'm very interested and very passionate about. But as I said, I don't claim to be an expert. And I just share my opinions on what's happening and what we know. So I wouldn't say I took a bit of a break on the weekend, but I didn't pay as close attention to what was going on in politics this weekend, simply because on Friday with SNAP, it was, so the USDA had made an announcement that they were going to be issuing out SNAP benefits. Some states had already started paying out partial SNAP benefits. Actually, Pennsylvania was one of those states. And then it was the Supreme Court upheld Trump's appeal. And then it was only going to be upheld for 2 days. And then he was going to have to issue out the payments. Then they retracted the statement saying that it wasn't going to be issued out until the shutdown was over. So it just felt like every time I looked at something online to look at the news to see what was going on, it was just, they were going to pay out SNAP benefits, and they weren't going to pay out SNAP benefits, and then they were going to pay out partial benefits. And then it was such a roller coaster that it was stressing me out, honestly. And I don't collect SNAP benefits, so I can only imagine being someone who's sitting here waiting to see if their benefits are going to come in, to see if they can feed their family. I can only imagine how much more stress they felt in that situation. But that kind of led us into what happened on Sunday night, last night. And I can only say that I feel betrayed as a Democrat supporter. I did watch Vosh yesterday and today, and he is much more angry and vocal about this than I am. But it's kind of at the point now where it feels like the Democrats caved, and that the shutdown and people going without their SNAP benefits was all for nothing, because 8 Democrats did cave, and we are where we are. So supposedly what's happening now is that the government is funded until January. I anticipate in January that we're going to have another shutdown, because even though the Democrats didn't get Republicans to cave on the ACA subsidies, they're claiming that the Republicans have promised that there's going to be a vote on continuing those ACA subsidies in January. There's a lot of people that are saying that that's not going to happen. The Senate Democrats that voted yes for the CR resolution have said that there's a lot of Republicans that agree with them, and then we'll have a vote. So I feel like it's all up in the air. Like we've got no guarantee of what's going to happen, and we're just kind of flying by the seat of our pants at this point. But it does feel like holding out for 40 days is kind of really all for nothing if the Senate Democrats caved anyway, right? Like, what's the point? So, and this is only in the end really going to hurt Democrats. There's a lot of Democrats that are like, it's like they're taking the blame, you know? And I watched a news clip of one of the Senate Democrats that had voted yes say that that they were worried about people not getting SNAP, which we all were. But we were in the process of forcing Donald Trump to pay out those contingency funds so that people could eat. You know, like this was pointing to Donald Trump being responsible. And at this point, it feels like the Republicans can try and get away with anything at this point, because at some point of the process, the Democrats that they need the votes for are going to give them what they want, so they can try anything. You know, it feels like we're back at square one, and that's really frustrating. And it certainly does feel like a betrayal from the Democrats. And again, that's like, I don't know. It's frustrating. It's frustrating to say the least. So I just wanted to like go over some of the talking points with the ACA subsidies. Because I mean, that's really kind of the foundation of what this issue is. Because the Republicans want to repeal the ACA. And I get it. The ACA is not a perfect system. It's not. We need something better. We're all on board with that. But the problem is they want to repeal the ACA so that the people that are enrolled in it are going to be paying outrageous premiums. But there's nothing in place of it. Like, the Republicans don't have a plan, even a suggestion or an idea of what can be done to replace it. And what that means is that if we don't have anything to replace it, then that's going to leave a lot of Americans not being able to afford healthcare, which puts a huge strain on the healthcare system as a whole. And that's not going to do anybody any good, because people are, and I've mentioned this in other streams, that without healthcare, people are not going to be going to their doctor and their GPs and their specialists, you know, for maintenance care, preventative care. They're going to be waiting until they absolutely can't avoid going to a doctor. They're going to be going to urgent cares. They're going to be going to ERs. They're going to be overloading our healthcare system because there's no other option. People are going to start dying. People are going to start going bankrupt. You know, like this feels overall like a really bad situation for all Americans, because it's going to affect us wherever you are on the spectrum of healthcare. I mean, the biggest risk, of course, is the premium increases for a household, because without the subsidies, marketplace enrollees could see their out-of-pocket premium costs more than double than what 2025 is. And we're already seeing examples of people getting their notices because we are in open enrollment right now. We're seeing those notices go out showing us how much those premiums are going to jump for families, and like even the elderly that are on fixed incomes. How are they going to afford $2,000-$3,000 health insurance premiums a month? I mean, they're already expensive as they are, but without those subsidies, they're going to shoot through the roof. How are they going to afford that? And like, just as an example, like a person earning 166% of poverty could go from paying $160 annually with a subsidy to over $1,000 without it. That's a big jump. And I don't know about you, even though I am not pinching my pennies yet, that's not that's not a cost that I can incur. Like my family, we can't afford that. We're just making it. We're just making it right now. So imagine the people out there that are living like literally paycheck to paycheck. They're going to have to drop their health care, and that's what they're going to end up doing. They're going to see it as something that they can dispose of in favor of paying their rent or their car insurance, or their, putting food on the table, heating their houses, because we're going into winter. It's going to start getting cold, and those energy bills are going to be shooting up as well. So it's like, how are people supposed to survive? And Republicans just don't seem to care. And the Senate Democrats that voted yes for this goddamn bill don't seem to care either. So it's like, what are we as the Americans supposed to do? If we vote Democrat, they don't care. We vote Republican, they don't care. What does that leave us with? Politicians just aren't out there to do the jobs that we are electing them to do. They're causing more harm than good on both sides of the spectrum. And that's a really scary thing, because it's like, who's looking out for us? No one. At this point, no one. What matters is the almighty dollar. And Americans just aren't mad enough to do anything about it yet. Millions will lose coverage and become uninsured. So, I mean, that we knew. Analysts have warned that if subsidies expire, millions may drop out of the marketplace because insurance becomes unaffordable. I mean, that we know. But this is also something. The risk pool gets worse. So younger, healthier people may forego coverage because of cost, which drives up premiums for remaining enrollees. So the people that can't afford it will be like, okay, we can't do it. And the people that can afford to stay on it for the time being will see their premiums go up to make up for that fall of the people that are dropping off of healthcare. So again, even if you're not in the ACA or using ACA, this is going to affect you and how much money that you're paying out. And life is just going to get so much more expensive. I'm sorry, I keep looking over here to see if there's comments because I'm on another screen. But yeah, so like life is going to get expensive for everyone. It's not just the people on Medicare. It's not just the people that are enrolled in ACA. It's all the rest of us too that are going to see the price hike. We're going to see a lot of people that are going to be a lot sicker. And in the end, that's going to cost you a lot more, right? People are going to start going bankrupt because for something that you could have addressed right away with, like, say, your GP or your specialist, that could be a minor issue. If you're not going to the doctor because you don't have health care, that issue is going to gradually get worse to the point where you're going to end up in the emergency room, and that's going to be really expensive. There's a saying out there is that it's unaffordable to be poor. right? Poverty is very, very expensive because you try to save a buck now, but later on down the line, it costs you an arm and a leg. And then what do you do? Right? Um, Delayed or foregone care due to unaffordable premiums can lead to more expensive emergency care, worsening public health, and increasing system cost burdens. So, we've already seen that some rural hospitals are closing down because of Medicare cuts, right? So, we have people that are going to be out in rural communities that are just not going to have access to care. So, not only are they not going to have insurance, but if they have an emergency, how the hell are they going to get to a hospital that's an hour and a half, 2 hours away, right? What if it's a life threatening condition? And if you have to get, say, you have to get life flighted somewhere, can you imagine how much that is going to be? Like, how much does a life? Let's find out. Let's see. What is the average cost of a flight? Oh, wow. I knew it was expensive, but I didn't know it was that expensive. According to Google, the average cost for a single life flight is between 12,000 and 25,000. But this can be higher without insurance. So those prices are considering insurance. But without insurance can reach up to $80,000 or more. Costs vary based on factors like distance traveled, type of aircraft, helicopter versus plane, and the level of medical care required. Some insurance and membership plans can cover a portion or all of the patient's out of pocket expenses. Well, I mean, I guess you're up shit's creek then if you're out in a rural community with no insurance and no hospital to get to. You might as well just claim bankruptcy. That's crazy. I didn't realize that that was so expensive. Let me tell you, this whole thing has made me appreciate the healthcare system that I had while I was up in Canada. Now, granted, universal healthcare is fantastic. There is obviously flaws in the system. There's going to be flaws in any system. And conservatives always seem to muck it up. I don't know why. That's what happened in Ontario when Dougie Ford was elected. He's conservative and he made a lot of changes because they want to move towards privatized healthcare. But there's one thing that I have learned to appreciate much more is being able to go to the doctor and not have to worry about paying a copay or getting a bill in the mail. Um, that has definitely been a major culture shock coming from Canada into the US. I had a bill that went into collections for something like, I don't know, it was like $300 or something like that. And it was for my part of the process for my breast cancer screening that I went through last year in January. Um, I had to go for a mammogram. They found something on my mammogram. So then I had to go for a second mammogram. And then I ended up having to go through the whole biopsy process because they found something. Ultimately, it turned out that it was nothing. It was scar tissue from um, breast reduction that I had in 2018. However, they wanted to do this scan and this biopsy just to be on the safe side because they couldn't tell whether it was a mass or whether it was scar tissue. So luckily for me, it turned out to be scar tissue, which is great. But in all of that, um, I didn't realize, I figured that, when you get a medical bill, first of all, the whole procedure, the whole biopsy procedure was not covered by my insurance, which is ridiculous. Why am I paying insurance if a routine cancer screening is not covered? Like, what's the point, right? But besides the fact, the whole biopsy process cost me $5,000. So when I got that bill, I assumed wrongly that that $5,000 bill that's on my UCP portal is all together and then I just make payments on it. You know, what I didn't realize is that all the different types of services and doctors and procedures that you get all bill you separately. So I didn't know that. And I ended up going into collections for like a $300 bill when I thought it was part of a balance that I was paying. And that apparently is not how that works. So there's like scans and blood work and all this kind of stuff. It's all billed and sent to you separately. It's not just one big balance, right? So in all of the shuffle of doing all of these tests and things like that, this bill just kind of got lost on the wayside and wasn't included in the balance. And, that was really confusing as someone coming from a system where it's, a single payer universal healthcare system where you can get these kinds of tests done and not have to worry about it because the taxes that you pay cover all of that, right? And it's interesting because I've had conversations with Republicans here in the US who are adamantly against universal health care. They don't believe that a universal healthcare system will work. The main reason in talking to them about it, the main reason has been, well, they're worried about people abusing the system. So they would rather nobody have health care and pay for your own than there might be somebody that dogs the system and abuses it, which is kind of a silly reasoning because no matter what kind of system you have, somebody is going to attempt to abuse it or successfully abuse it. That's going to happen across the board. No matter what it is, where it is, there's going to be somebody that's going to try and break the rules, right? So are you going to deny millions of people a system that actually works in the off chance that there's going to be a handful of people that are going to try and abuse the system? You know, um, often an argument that I hear is that universal health care means that your taxes are going to go up and you're going to pay so much more in taxes, yada, yada, yada. I actually sat down with someone to figure out the numbers of what I was paying in Canada for my taxes versus what I have been paying in the US so far. So, working in both countries, I kind of have a clearer view, right? I pay more in federal and income taxes here in the US than I did in Canada. That's just how it is. I pay more taxes here in Pennsylvania. What's frustrating is trying to get people to understand that even though I'm paying more in taxes, I mean, it's not a huge difference. It's very close, but it still ends up being more in the US. But comparatively, those taxes that I was paying in Canada was covering my health care in it, right? Here, I'm paying all of these taxes. I'm paying more taxes. But on top of that, I also have to pay insurance premiums. And then I have to pay my medical bills that aren't covered by my insurance. And I have to pay copays. And I have to pay for tests. And in the off chance I go, somewhere that's out of network. So, like, we get taxed much more heavily for less return, less benefit to us as taxpayers here in the US. I had 3 children in Canada. I didn't pay a cent to have those babies. At most, I paid like $20 for my husband to come and park when I was giving birth. Like, that's what I paid. Then on top of that, I also got to stay home for a year with each of them, and it was paid. So I got to stay home and raise my child for the first year of their life because there was a system in place to make sure that I was able to do that. And, now obviously not just anybody gets that, right? You have to work so many hours, you have to pay into the system. But that's part of the taxes that you pay on your paycheck go to that fund that you can then pull from if you're sick or you have to take care of a sick family member or you adopt a baby or you have a baby. There's so many different things that you can qualify for to stay home and get paid because our taxes are put into this system. And it's called employment insurance. So that way you can get paid while you're doing whatever it is that needs to be done, right? Like we have a whole thing now where if you have an elderly parent that is ill and you need to stay home and take care of them, you can do that for almost up to a year and still get paid almost your full wages while you're taking care of that family member, you know? And it's just, it's kind of confusing to me that the Republican Party tries to push this idea of family first, family first. The nuclear family is so important, yet they don't have any policies whatsoever to ensure that families are taken care of or that families can take care of each other, right? Like they want you to have kids, but then they turn around and do shit like, let's not pay out SNAP, right? There's no benefit and there's no assistance to help people or encourage people to have kids. It's just way too expensive out there, you know? And it's like for a single mom on SNAP, Republicans, and I've seen this myself, Republicans will sit here and point the finger and go, well, you shouldn't have had kids that you couldn't afford. Okay. But you told us to go out and have kids. You wanted us to have kids. You were harping on the fact that the birth rate in the US is so low. But then when I go and have kids, then you harp on me and accuse me of abusing the system and being lazy and staying home and collecting SNAP to feed my kids. But you wanted me to have these kids in the first place, right? Or, let's do stuff like actually get corporations to pay a living wage so that people can afford to have families. When you have corporations like Walmart that bring in billions upon billions of dollars in profit every year, but they don't pay their full-time employees enough to take care of their families that they need to be subsidized by SNAP. Why are we not fixing that? Because don't you think that if people had more disposable income, people would be more willing to have families? They'd be going out there and buying houses and having kids and replacing, that birth rate. But that's just something that's unavoidable now. It's getting even too expensive now to have pets because vet bills are so bad. So it's like all of these things that would lead to families having more children, it seems like the Republicans are against everything that would help make that happen. And just this healthcare issue alone proves that they don't actually mean what they say. They want you to have kids, but they want you to be poor while doing it because you're easier to control and manipulate when you're poor and you don't have really any other options, right? If you can't afford to go out there and educate yourself, you're more easily manipulated. If you're poor and you're desperate, you're more easily to be manipulated. And that's what they want for us. They want to keep us stupid and poor. Oh, my goodness. Okay. I had more notes. Okay, yeah, this is the more risks of losing the ACA. So, not having the ACA subsidies causes marketplace instability and insurer risks. So when subsidies drop, the marketplace becomes less stable. Premiums rise, healthier people leave, insurers face higher risk and may pull out or raise prices further. So they may just straight up say, we're not going to insure you because you're too expensive, And at one point, where does, pre-existing conditions come in? Okay, you're not going to have your health care now because you're too expensive because you're high risk. You have a high risk condition. You have a pre-existing condition. We're going to charge you more. So it's average Americans that are going to lose out at the end of the day. Do you think that the people in Congress and the Senate who are getting universal health care from the government, do you think that they're going to care? No, because it's not going to affect them. States may struggle to reset rates in time of enrollment if subsidy policy is uncertain, leading to the confusion and further enrollment drops. Yeah, because even just this weekend, seeing with, what's going on. Are they going to vote? Are they not going to vote? Are they going to pay out SNAP? Are they not going to pay out SNAP? It can be extremely frustrating with all this back and forth. And people just be kind of like throw their hands up and go, well, what can we do about it? They can't even decide what they're going to do, right? And they're arguing over American lives. And it just feels like the Americans that voted these people into their positions of power do not matter to them. If we're going to suffer, oh well, they're where they want to be. Why are they going to care about us? So there's also going to be political and economic ripple effects. So the burden falls disproportionately low on moderate income households, which raises equity concerns. Health insurance premium stocks or shocks hundreds or thousands more per year, strain household budgets, reduce consumer spending, and increase financial insecurity. Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, if you're going to struggle to keep your health insurance, because let's say you have a child or you yourself, you're diabetic. Diabetes is not a cheap disease to have, especially if you're insulin dependent. So let's just say that you have a child that's diabetic. So you have to fight to keep that insurance. You have to make sure that you're scraping pennies in order to keep that insurance, right? You're not going to have disposable income to spend on other things because it's going to be all going into healthcare, which overall, with having less disposable income, hurts the economy because people aren't out there spending money because they're rationing it for the necessities like healthcare. And this is going to cause small businesses to fail because they're not going to be having as much business. Like, just overall, you're just going to see this snowball effect because people just don't have money to spend, right? And especially when we're coming up on a time of year like the holidays where a lot of people spend a lot of money, those profit margins are going to be a lot smaller because people just don't have the money to spend, right? You can't get blood from a stone, is the saying. You don't have money to spend, you're not going to be out there spending it because you're going to be saving it for these types of necessities. From a political standpoint, letting subsidies lapse undermines trust in policy promises and could damage lawmakers' credibility without constituents who can count on that support. So overall, I think this is going to affect both Democrats and Republicans at this point, because a lot of the Senate a lot of the Senate Democrats are taking the fall and taking the responsibility for the shutdown. So that's going to hurt Democrats, but it's also going to hurt Republicans as well. We saw last week on Tuesday with the election and how we went all blue, and there was a momentary reprise in liberals and Democrats because it felt like, okay, well, maybe we can handle this. Maybe we can do this. Maybe there is light at the end of the tunnel. But being betrayed by the Democrats with this vote now, I mean, the Democrats' approval rating was low to begin with. It was lower than what Donald Trump's approval rating is. This is not going to help it at all in any way. So it kind of makes that possible blue wave that could come at the midterms see a little bit more less secure now that the Democrats have kind of come in, caved, and it feels like the last month and a half has really been for nothing. And people are going to remember that when it comes time to vote. All right. I don't want my discussion questions. So, let's just overall see. So, I was kind of confused because I know that there was some changes made to the CR. And I assumed that last night when they made the vote and they voted yes, that was going to automatically open the government. I've heard both of these. I've heard that it has to go back to the House to be voted on again, now that the Senate has passed it. But I've also heard that no, the House has already passed it. The Senate just needed to pass it, and now it goes to Donald Trump for signing. So I honestly couldn't tell you which way it's supposed to go. So I tried to pull as much information as I can. I am hoping that this means it's going back to the House to vote, because then it might mean that we have a chance. But my hopes are not really all that high. So if we just summarize what happened last night, They voted 60-40 to advance a bipartisan stopgap funding bill that would reopen the government through January 30th, 2026. And as I said earlier in the stream, I have a sneaking suspicion that we're going to end up in another shutdown once we get to the end of this bill. Hopefully not, but who knows? Who knows at this point? We can't predict anything. We may sit here and think, oh, we know what's going to happen, and then something completely off the wall happens. So, it was in total 8 Democrats that joined the Republicans to pass the motion, ending the longest government shutdown in history. So it's 40 plus. I think we're at 40 plus days now, aren't we? What day of the shutdown are we on? What day are on government? I thought we were at 40 yesterday, so today might be 41. Google, are you gonna tell me? Government shutdown clock. I don't know. I just want to know how many days it's been. Ugh. America First works. Yeah, sure it does. I don't know. Is this seconds? That might be seconds. That's kind of dumb. I just want to know how many days it's been. Okay. Senate passes the government funding bill. Yes, we already read that. Senate on Monday passed a short-term government funding bill and sent it to the House, where a vote could come as early as Wednesday. Okay, so that answers my question. They do have to go back to the House and vote on Wednesday. So I guess we're going to see what's happening on Wednesday. So the government is still shut down. The bill would fund the government through January 30th, provide funding for some government agencies for the remainder of the fiscal year. Jeffrey says House Democrats considering a discharge petition on ACA subsidies extension. Senate locks in vote on funding bill Monday night. Okay, well, we kind of knew that. All right. I don't want to see Mike Johnson up here in the corner. No thanks. The bill narrowly passed by a 60-40 vote. We knew that. 8 Democrats voted for the bill. Tim Kaine, Dick Durbin, Maggie Hassan, Jeannie Shaheen, Jackie Rose, and Catherine Cortez Masto, John Fetterman, Angus King. Senator Rand Paul was the only Republican to vote against the bill. So the bill goes back to the House, for Speaker Mike Johnson said Monday a vote could come as early as Wednesday. If it passes there, it would go to Donald Trump for his signature and end the government shutdown. Here we go. I had to read a couple of paragraphs to get there, but we are now in the 41st day. Sorry. My leg was falling asleep. Okay, so here we have a little bit of an explanation. Here, I'll share this with you guys so that you can read it with me instead of just listening to me yammer on. Share screen. And we were looking at this. Yes. There we go. So I share it with all of you lovely people. And now you can read it with me. All right. So House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries wouldn't say if he was disappointed in the 8 Senate Democrats who voted with Republicans. I don't know why. He should have just called them out and said he was disappointed. I don't know what harm that would have caused at this point. To advance the Senate funding plan, when pressed by ABC's Jay O'Brien. I'm focused on the American people. He said in a gaggle in the Capitol. Does anyone not think healthcare is a real issue for the American people, and we are in the middle of this fight right now? Yeah. We are focused on trying to deliver what we can deliver, and that should include extending the Affordable Care Act subsidies. I agree. We should be extending. There should be 2 things happening here. One, they should be extending the Affordable Care Act subsidies so that Americans can afford their health insurance. And then if the ACA is so terrible and it caused premiums to be so expensive that they need these subsidies, then we should be working together, both Republicans and Democrats, to come up with a system that's better to keep healthcare affordable for Americans. Donald Trump has been promising different healthcare way back in 2015 when he first started campaigning, and then when he won. There was always this promise that he was going to replace it with a better healthcare system, and they still don't even have a basic concept of what that would be. But they want to repeal what we already have without something to replace it. That's like having a job and being like, I hate this job. This is a terrible job. I'm just going to quit. And then I'm going to cross my fingers that I'm going to find something in the meantime and be able to support myself and support my family until I find another job. And hopefully I find another job. You know what I mean? No, that's not how you know that when you have a job and you need to find something else, you keep the job that you have so that you can pay the bills until you find something better and you can move on. Kind of the same thing here, right? Keep the Affordable Care Act and the subsidies so that people can afford their health care and work on a better system, something that will make healthcare more affordable for Americans and will work better all around. I don't know why that's such a difficult concept. He said he expects all House Democrats to make it back in time to vote in the House and would not say if leadership is whipping members against this funding bill. I don't know. When pressed if the shutdown was worthwhile, Jeffrey said at the end of the day, the fight lives on. Which, I mean, totally okay for them because their health care is paid for, is it not? Right? They don't have to sit there and struggle like the rest of us because they get their health care. They get their paychecks. You know what I mean? The rest of Americans don't get SNAP and have to fight for health care. They get to sit here in their cushy little jobs and not worry about it. They still get their paychecks. They still get their health care, right? So there's no urgency there for them. This comes as Speaker Mike Johnson refused to commit to holding a vote on the ACA subsidies. So but I thought that was why the Senate Democrats agreed to say yes in the first place with the promise of holding a vote on the ACA subsidies. Now this is saying here Mike Johnson is refused. I feel like we're getting had, honestly. A discharge petition will require 218 signatures to force a vote in the House. There are several House Republicans who have advocated for a one-year extension of the ACA tax credits. It's unlikely Johnson would support this effort. Of course not, because Johnson is a fucking spineless coward. I don't. This is extremely disheartening because the Senate Democrats said that the reason why they said yes in the first place was because they agreed that they were going to hold a vote on the ACA subsidies. But if Mike Johnson is not even committing to that, then what was the point of the Democrats saying yes in the first place yesterday? I wish I could say what I'm really thinking, but I don't want my YouTube channel taken down. So yeah, there's that. That's extremely frustrating. Extremely frustrating. So there was this little infographic that I was going to throw up for you guys to take a look. So what the Senate vote means for the Republicans and Trump, potential advantages. So demonstrated leverage in the Senate. Republicans moved the funding resolution forward with 8 Democrats joining them. Relief from the shutdown blame risk, so Republicans can argue the shutdown. What? What? That's not a whole word. I never read that. But anyway, I mean, it's not wrong because Democrats are essentially taking the blame now at this point about the shutdown. And again, just means that the 41 plus days that we have been shut down have been all for nothing. Trump's positioning on healthcare subsidies, delay fight gives Trump's handseed to criticize. Whoa, I did not read this infographic very well. With stopgap in place, Republicans have room to focus on other priorities. It's disheartening. It really is, because this just kind of, Republicans were faltering because of this shutdown, because they were holding out, because Schumer came to them and said, if you can agree to extend these ACA subsidies for a year, we'll agree to open up the government. And Republicans said no. Donald Trump was actively fighting to stop feeding starving Americans. Like, there's no other way to put that. When he went to the Supreme Court to sue to not pay out benefits to Americans so that they can eat, I mean, Republicans were just taking it. They were taking it for the team. And now it's all for naught. It's all for naught. So I was kind of curious about what kind of damage control there could be done, and what Democrats could do at this point, because I really don't see this ending well for Democrats either. They've kind of lost any type of upper hand that they might have had. So people are suggesting that they should be protecting federal workers and public services. They'll stress that by advancing the bill, they got government operations back online, secured back pay for federal employees, and prevented further economic disruption. I guess that part of that remains to be seen, because they were already a problem before. Fetterman was a traitor to the party before. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're bowing down to Trump for absolutely nothing. I mean, all it's done is reinforce the fact that he can just do whatever the hell he wants, and in the end, he's going to get what he wants anyway, right? But I've heard that that the employees, or the federal employees that were still working through the shutdown, not getting a paycheck, are not going to get their back pay. So I'm hoping that at least, at minimum, with this vote, that this means that they're going to grant back pay for federal employees. But I mean, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? Whether that's actually going to be something that Trump sticks to, because it seems like no matter what the law is, no matter what any other branches of the government say, Trump just does whatever the hell he wants. Screw the consequences. And then the Supreme Court just backs him up. So, I mean, I'm sure like Democrats want to emphasize that, yeah, they're going to get the federal employees paid again, get government operations back online. But who knows if those federal employees are actually going to get any of the back pay for the last month and a half? Who knows? It's also suggesting that they should frame this as a step, not an end. So they'll possibly argue that this isn't the final battle, which I have already heard in some of the interviews today. It's a stopgap to reopen the government while the real fight for key priorities like the ACA continues. This is this is what's so frustrating, is because Republicans lie. We know Republicans lie. So the fact that the Republicans said, yeah, we might do a vote on the ACA subsidies, but we might not. The fact that that was enough to get 8 Democrats to say yes to pass the bill is just ridiculous. And the fact that now that they voted yes, and Mike Johnson is kind of rolling that back now, saying that he's not going to commit to a vote, again, meaning they bamboozled the Democrats by promising them something that they had no intention of keeping. Reasserting the healthcare narrative, so Democrats will pivot to highlight how the ACA subsidies issue remains unresolved, place the burden back on Republicans for refusing to lock it in, and preparing for the December vote on that issue. I mean, it doesn't solve anything, because by saying yes and the Republicans not committing to any of the Democrats' demands, we're back at square one. We're just going to end up in another shutdown and at another stalemate. And Republicans know that if they push hard enough, that the Democrats are going to cave, because they've already caved. because they're not standing up to Donald Trump. They're not standing up to MAGA. And they're just going to be a pushover. Mobilizing the base and clarifying the party's fight identity. They'll need to reassure progressives and activists that the party remains committed to big goals. We already know that that's not happening. We already know that the Democrats, especially the Senate Democrats, don't give a shit about us. They really don't. Holding Republicans accountable for the next phase. They're not holding Republicans accountable, though. That's the thing. Democrats can set the narrative. We reopen the government. Now it's your turn to extend the subsidies and protect affordability. That's not going to matter. It's really not going to matter. And the Republicans are not going to fall for that. They're just going to ignore it, just like they ignore everything else. This shifts the pressure on the GOP. There's already been pressure on the GOP, and we can see that it's not making a difference. What Democrats must do to regain credibility. I question that. I really question that at this point. Even if they were to demonstrate some kind of follow through and, have another vote in December on the ACA subsidies, or even if it doesn't happen until the new year, the Democrats already have lost credibility, and losing credibility at this point is really going to affect them when it comes time to vote in the midterms. And we really need to win those midterms. It's really starting to feel like a lost cause, honestly. Show results for constituents. We're not seeing any results. So that's the thing, especially for lower and moderate income voters. There must be tangible protections or relief. We don't have that. Insurance affordability, premium subsidies. That's like, they can't do that right now. How to mitigate. So I pulled up this little information page, and it's like key risks and how Democrats can mitigate them. So the risk is appearing weak or the fact that they caved. I don't really see if there's any other way around that. Like, there's no other way to look at that other than the fact that the Democrats caved. So a suggestion is to emphasize the alternative. Prolonged shutdown would have worsened things. Not really. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of federal employees out there that weren't getting paid. But in the end, we're right back where we started before the shutdown. Premiums are still going to go up. SNAP and Medicare are still being cut. Like, we didn't get anything out of this whatsoever. And a prolonged shutdown would have worsened things. The opening the government is going to make things worse. It just seems like no matter which direction we go in, things are just going to get fucking worse. We acted because Americans couldn't wait. We can't wait for healthcare subsidies either. Like, damned if we do, damned if we don't. Progressive base feels betrayed. Hell yeah. Deliver quick wins. What quick wins? This wasn't a win. This wasn't even close to a win. There's more people that I have seen that are liberals and Democrats that are pissed off about this, about the Dems caving, than actually getting the government up and running again. Ensure the ACA subsidies fight stays front and center, not overshadowed by we reopen messaging. I mean, they're already doing that. They're already saying, well, we're still going to fight for the ACA. We're still going to fight for the ACA. But you just caved. So what kind of fight can we expect? It's like we're losing confidence in your ability to fight and your willingness to fight. It almost seems like this is just a show, right? We're going to tell you that we're going to fight for the ACA, but when it comes actually time to do the fighting for the ACA subsidies, it's not really, in the end, it's not really going to matter. We're not actually going to fight for it. We just want you to think that we're going to fight for it so that you'll vote for us. Internal leadership crisis. That is another thing that I have seen is, yes, the call for Schumer to step down. There's a lot of people that are pinning this, particularly on Schumer. Even though Schumer still voted no for the bill, I believe one of the, who was it? I think it, I know I saw her talking. She was on Fox and Friends, which was surprising. The fact that, the day after the vote that she shows up on Fox and Friends, like, why would that be your first choice to go to talk to somebody about it, right? Um, but she was talking about what that was one of the questions that she was asked was, did you do this with the blessing of the minority leader? Because Schumer voted no. And she's like, no, Schumer knew, leadership knew the way we were going to go. So even though he voted no, he still didn't prevent the rest of them from voting yes. So this is going to cause a split in the caucus. And I mean, we've already seen what Republicans do, or what happens with Republicans with all the infighting that's going on and how they're just kind of crumbling. And it's not going to do anyone any favors if the Democrats follow suit and crumble and eat each other alive too. It feels overall, both Democrat and Republican, the government is just kind of crumbling and falling apart. And with a two-party country, there's nothing there left. Who's going to pick up the pieces and put it back together? I don't. Leadership must engage with all wings of the party, progressive, moderate, to build on buy-in for next steps. I mean, at this point, I don't know how successful or how effective that would be, because it doesn't feel like it would be effective at all, honestly. Republicans claiming the shop is back open and Democrats lost leverage. Well, I mean, that's the truth, though. The Republicans got what they wanted. Democrats lost the leverage that they have, and that's only gonna hurt Democrats in the end. Democrats must show that while they reopen the government, the real fight, healthcare affordability, has been handed to the Republicans, and they will be held accountable. But they haven't been held accountable up until this point. So why all of a sudden would we believe that they're going to start holding Republicans accountable? They just caved to them and gave them what they wanted. Where's the holding them accountable part of that? What's going to be different now that the government's open? How are they going to hold them accountable? What do they plan? Yes, they have to hold them accountable, but they need to demonstrate a way that they're going to successfully do that. So the scheduled December vote for the ACA subsidy extension, will it happen? Will it succeed? I mean, at this point, as of 3 hours ago, Mike Johnson is saying he's not even going to commit to a vote yet. So, I mean, even if there is a vote actually scheduled for December, who knows if it's even going to happen if the majority leader is saying he's not going to commit to it. The messaging around the January 30th, 2026 deadline. Democrats should prepare how to respond if Republicans use the next deadline as leverage. As I said a couple of times already, I see us running into yet another shutdown. State level and down ballot repercussions. Are Democratic candidates using the narrative of we preserve services, or are they being forced onto the defensive? They're going to be forced onto the defensive for sure. For sure. I've already seen Democrats very pissed off about this. But then that begs the question, if we're pissed off at Democrats enough that it's going to affect them at the ballot box, who are we voting for? Like, is this just going to give Republicans the opportunity to maintain their majority? Because I don't see Democrats flipping and voting Republican. The only other option I see is going to more independent, smaller candidates. And I mean, we've already seen, unless there's going to be mass support for a particular independent, that's really not going to do anything other than make the votes for the Democrats weaker and give Republicans the opportunity to maintain their majority. Internal party debates and resignations. Yeah, Schumer should absolutely resign. That's without question, I think, something that he should do. Do I see it happening? No, but it's definitely something that should happen. Anyway, so I guess where we're at is kind of up in the air. I wish I knew where we were headed at this point, but we can't predict the future. I see, and oops, I didn't want to close that. I see another shutdown in the future, and I see, unfortunately, the Republicans getting stronger. I don't want it to be that way, but I feel like the Democrats voting yes on this bill is not going to end well for us. And that that little boost of hope that we got last Tuesday was just kind of squashed with that vote yesterday, and I don't see that ending well for us. But I guess all we can do is just keep waiting and watching, because what else is the option for us? What else can we do? I wish I knew. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I appreciate you sticking it out. I didn't plan on streaming for over an hour yet again, but here we are. There's a lot going on. But thank you for watching. I appreciate it. If you watched it on Kick, please drop a follow. If you're here on YouTube, please like and subscribe. That would be much appreciated. My last stream from Thursday is almost at 340 views or something like that, which is absolutely amazing for a very small content creator like me that only has, 600 plus subscribers. Having a view with almost 350 views on it is kind of a big deal. So I appreciate everybody that watches. If you're watching this on the replay, please drop a like, leave a comment. I love engaging with everybody. And as long as you're polite and respectful, I will do the same in return. But I hope everyone has a great night. Make good choices, and I will talk to you tomorrow.